Hello! Welcome to Why Not Both, the podcast all about how our multiple passions and interests shape our identity and our lives. My name is Pam Schaefer, and I am a musician and therapist in Los Angeles, and I also happen to be your host. This podcast is produced by Laura Studeris, and for this season, we've partnered up with Under the Radar magazine. If you like what you hear, you can hang out with us on social media. We are on Twitter and Instagram at WNB the podcast. And if you really, really like what you hear, please support us on Patreon. We are under Why Not Both podcast. When you join our Patreon, you get a whole bunch of really cool behind the scenes stuff and you get to chat with us. And that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy our interviews.
When I have something scheduled, and there's not much else on my schedule, I will still figure out a way to accidentally be late to it.
Yeah, I'm not doing much these days. Usually if I have one thing on the calendar, it takes up my entire day, and everything I do ends up being around that errand, that single errand I have to run at 2:00. But right now I'm not really up to much. So I welcome an opportunity to break the monotony.
Oh, well, welcome to Why Not Both. It hopefully is better than the monotony.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you said that you usually are doing a bunch of stuff, and now is it because of the current gestures to the scary everything outside?
Yeah, that has something to do with it. But this time of the year, I just happen to not have a lot going on. There was going to be a Europe tour at the end of February, but that's just been canceled. So I truly have literally nothing until April. And so I'm letting myself have, an easy transition into the new year. And the fall was really busy with an album release and release shows and tour, and then straight into the holidays. So it was kind of it was go for several months, it felt like. So I'm kind of just allowing myself to take the time that I need, and and not worry about filling up my day too much if I don't have to.
I like that. I was thinking what you said about how, the fall and then with the winter holidays, and it made me think of almost seasons, because quite literally seasons. But now it's the season where you're just no, we're just chilling and it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I think sometimes we feel a lot of pressure to be but what if I don't chill? Is there stuff to fill my time?
Yeah.
What, I guess, in those times, how do you like to kind of spend more of your downtime, especially with all the frenetics of the fall? What kind of, I guess, refuels you when you're in this kind of state?
So lately I've been reading a lot, which I've always really enjoyed, but now I actually have time to, it feels, it's funny to say, but to be able to sit down to read something and not have to look at the clock at any point and not have to worry about what block of time I have to fit my reading into. That's really special, and it makes reading that much more enjoyable when I can just read for as long as I want to. So I've been reading, I've been watching a lot of movies, and lately this week, my girlfriend works from home, and so we're always in the house together.
Yes.
Every single day, all day long. So we have little moments we try to give each other space throughout the day so it doesn't get too overwhelming. But this week we've been doing Marvel movie night every night. We make dinner and then we watch the first Tom Holland Spider-Man, and then we watch the two most recent Avengers. So we're catching up to watch the newest Spider-Man. So that's been fun to just not, we committed to doing it every single night this week, to watching these 2-hour superhero movies. So that's nice. It's another nice excuse to really not think about anything.
Yes.
And I haven't seen too many friends the past few weeks. So it if we have to be at home, might as well give ourselves something to look forward to.
Oh my God, I love that. I feel like I was just like, oh, this warms my heart because like every Shabbat, like my partner and I make a point to like do something nice but chill together. Whether it's like, like getting a dinner that we like or sharing a book with each other. It's like we do something to kind of mark like, oh, this is the ritual of just like, all right, let's chill together. And I was just like, oh my God, that's commitment. Like every night a Marvel movie. I'm like, I admire your commitment to sparkle.
Yeah, when we watched the first Spider-Man, we were like, this is so fun. It's so good. Now let's watch the movies that happen in between. I mean, we can't watch all of them, but we're at least committing to a few. I secretly love these superhero movies.
That's so fun. And like, it's interesting, like as an artist, I think that, sometimes we have to have times when we're taking in like media and art and movies and all that stuff. Like I'm about to share What We Do with the Shadows with him. He's never watched it before. So excited. Tomorrow is like our inaugural What We Do in the Shadows night.
That's great.
And like, it's interesting because when I talk to other artists about like what they like, I don't know, do you experience this when you're actively writing? Do you just like take in a lot of stuff, or do you like kind of abstain from other like music and stories and stuff and focus on your own?
I usually try to take in as much as I can, actually, because I find it makes me more generative if I'm actively like listening and watching things that I love. I feel like I can't help but get really excited and want to try something new. Because I think it's really hard sometimes if I'm just focused on myself and what I know how to do and what I am trying to learn. Like I find myself coming up against walls, I think, and I get bored, and it's hard to feel like this regeneration of of how to challenge myself, of how to try new things. And so usually if I'm in a rut or if I'm just eager to try something new, like I'll watch a bunch of YouTube videos, like live videos of people playing the artists that I like. And that oftentimes makes me inspired to, even if it's just spotting like one single guitar chord shape that I hadn't seen before, sometimes that can be enough to like jumpstart me into something new. Or sometimes it's watching a film that I really love and I'm moved by, or reading too. I definitely try to like take in as much as I can, because it helps me expand my world and get excited to create.
Yes. And I love what you said about that. Sometimes it can be this like tiny kernel in someone else's work that you see that you're just like, oh, I never thought of, oh, let me try that thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that. And I'm a big book nerd, so I must ask, I was like, what have you been reading lately?
I just finished a couple of things. I read Hanif Abdurraqib's latest book, A Little Devil in America, about they're different essays on Black performers throughout history. But I always have loved his writing, and he's one of my favorite authors ever, really.
I'm picking up my phone to put that in my reading list.
Yeah, all of his work is really good, and he writes about music a lot, and is a huge music fan. So I really enjoy his work. And then I just finished a novel called Animal by this author named Lisa Tadeo. I'm not sure how to say her last name, but
she wrote Three Women, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this book is really, I kind of just ran through it. It really, it was extremely captivating, really devastating, to be honest. And kind of just like heart-wrenching at times, but in a, I don't know, and like in a very like attractive way, if that makes sense. Like her writing is very propulsive and really kind of like dirty and ugly, and in a way that I don't often read in novels. So it was really, it was great. It was a great read, but also be prepared for like some hard stuff, I would say.
Got it.
Yeah.
Have you read My Dark Vanessa?
Mm-mm.
I think that's what it's called. I have this thing where I can always picture the cover of the books that I've read, and then I try to like read the cover.
Yeah.
What it is. That's so interesting that you talked about that, you know, that it had that like propulsiveness, but also that darkness in it. I'm going to look up the name because yet again, I'm like, is it the right thing? I'm like, what's it like not having ADHD? I have no idea. Relaxing. But yeah, it's My Dark Vanessa, and the author is Kate Elizabeth Russell. And it sounds like almost a similar thing to it, where I found myself so uncomfortable reading parts of it because it was like, it wasn't that it was outlandish or unbelievable, but it was like it took you to places that were valuable but uncomfortable psychologically. Was this at all similar in that aspect, or?
A little bit. I mean, I think I welcomed the discomfort a little bit because I think I appreciate whenever women find ways to write stories about women that are not like pleasing, really. Like I think I just appreciate that, and so I didn't mind the discomfort. I think by the end it was like just a little sad, and so that's always just something that you when something really brings you in, that's just like an added weight to it. But yeah, maybe it sounds a little similar to that feeling.
I have to check that out. The reason why I didn't put that on my book list, I was like, I don't want it to feel left out. I was like, I'll remember it because Lisa Taddeo, I was like, okay, I already know that author. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love also what you said about that you can sit and read and not have like a timer on yourself, because especially when we're describing, promoting the album and things like that, I feel like sometimes people who aren't musicians don't have as much insight into like what it's like when you release an album like that and what happens.
Yeah. I think leading up to the release, I really had to emotionally and psychologically prepare myself, because the album cycle is extremely all-encompassing and draining. I think mostly because, as so many artists talk about right now, so much of music promotion is just like self-presenting. It's the self and the image that you make of yourself to give to people online on social media. And I think, it would be one thing to prepare to release an album and to do like press and do interviews and then release it and have it be out in the world. But it's another thing to, have to post selfies so that the most people see them, and have to come up with cute and funny captions, and have to stick to like an algorithmic cycle of if I don't talk about myself this many times in a week, not enough people are going to pay attention, and I'm not going to sell records, and I'm not going to sell tickets to my shows. And so I think that's become the biggest burden, I think, for me, but for many other artists as well. And of course there's all of the excitement too. Like it's a very joyous and thrilling time as well to finally release something you've been working on. But yeah, you can't help but be a little bit jaded about it too. About what the industry is kind of turned into, or at least the mainstream, like established go-to way that people have come to release music right now.
Well, and it's so strange because creating that image of oneself, it's like, I find that it's almost like an extreme version of qualities that you already have. Like, it's not like you're creating necessarily someone entirely new,
right?
But it's like emphasizing certain parts of yourself. And it's like that becomes then the means to have genuine interactions with people, because people then see your music, like, but it's this weird thing because then they're interacting with almost this like extreme version of like 3 of your qualities. Right. But they're coming to you with like all of them. Like, I think it's so interesting during this time that we've all related so much online, but I think about like parasocial relationships that we have with artists, but what we're having that relationship with is what you just talked about, is that like that portrayal of what we choose to put out. And that's not even in like a malevolent way, but it's like you can't put every aspect of yourself online.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's been, I think, the biggest shift in the last couple of years is it has been a shift in what I choose to share. And I think for when I was younger, I felt this really strong attachment to like being an authentic, honest, like version of myself online, and but of course it was still like curated every step of the way. But I still like it felt so important to me to present that, and now I really care so little about about anything that I share and what anybody thinks of me, really. But it didn't used to be that way. But I think it's become maybe a necessary liberation for myself, and in being like a semi-public facing person, and the smallest, in my very small little world.
Yes. It's interesting also that you said like, now I don't, like, it's almost like you wanted to be authentic, but that made you curate more. And now that you're like, oh, I'm not that concerned. It sounds like it almost like it's like it almost switched. That's really interesting. Yeah. What caused that changeover? And do you find that you do interact differently with the people who come to your music?
I think releasing something, like the first thing I released, it was really just for fun, and I had no expectations. And so then, but kind of building a career out of it, and like facing my future, and deciding what kind of artist I wanted to be and what I wanted to make. I think I had to choose to like recommit my art to myself, because I think it's very easy to like step into this career and industry and lose sight of that, and think a lot about like what your work means, like in, I don't know, in like this grander scheme of the world, or just the music industry, or maybe just your city's music scene, or anything like that. So I think it's an ongoing process of reminding myself who my work is for, which is ultimately me. And everyone else to share it with is like a bonus. And kind of like reminding myself of, it sounds a little cheesy, but like of the gift that it is that I get to even like write songs and share them. And so I think like that kind of internal shift, like automatically kind of shifted the way that I relate to the people who like consume my work or consume like my presentation as a person, because because it's a shift of understanding that it's not for them, but it's always going to be for me. And
it's fascinating because music is like such a communicative art form, but I feel similarly that it's like, I realized I would write music even if I didn't share it. Like I would still make it. It's like bonus round that we get. But then do you get the feeling, it's so funny, someone was chatting with me that they were their flight was delayed in Glasgow, and they were listening to one of my songs on repeat, and they just messaged me being like, I'm so glad I have this song. Like, it's really soothing. And like, that's so cool that something I got to make is like helping someone chill out. Well, because no one likes flight delays, like 0%.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like, I guess, how do you feel when you get those interactions, especially because we've been forced to, not be around people, and for good reason. Obviously, we want to keep each other safe, but it's been so strange to share this way and to not be able to necessarily connect as much like live.
Yeah, that was one thing that was really great about this most recent tour is there were, at almost every single show, there was at least one person who came up to the table afterwards to talk to me about some way that one of my songs had touched them, or meant something to them in their life, or altered something that they were going through. And that's always incredibly humbling and special to hear. And because it does feel impossible in a way, that anything that I would make would be that important to somebody that I don't know at all. But it also, and it's also reassuring that that the way that I write and the way that I can continue to make in this, with this focus of like being really like true and honest to myself, that it will continue to mean something to other people no matter what. That I don't have to worry about that being the end goal. Like that will happen, which is like the magic of music, I guess.
Yes. Well, it's like this magic of, and I don't know if you have this experience, but I often, when I'm writing or when I'm really focused on an emotional experience, I almost like forget that other people have these emotional experiences or have resonance with this.
Yeah.
Like, you get a state of like, oh, I'm the only one.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Like, no, I'm like a little human being like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
People are like, I felt that way too. And you're like, you did?
Right.
That's such a funny experience. I was just like, oh yeah. Yep. And I love that you were talking about gaining a lot of like inspiration for different ideas from what you consume, like media wise, because I love talking about books, and I'm like, restrain yourself, Pam. Do not talk only about the books. I was curious, like, so many times people pigeonhole, especially like female and female presenting artists, as writing only biographical music. How do you feel about that? Like, because I like that a lot of your songs are like stories. And so it's like, of course, some of what we write is drawn from like how we feel, which is our personal experience. But have you ever felt that way, that people are like, oh, so did this literally happen to you?
Yeah, for a while I would always get so annoyed when people would call me a singer-songwriter, because it was a similar thing of that, like something I think is mostly a phrase that is mostly ascribed to women who make music, as opposed to just being like a musician.
Yeah.
And I think it was connected to that idea of like, I am only writing these like confessional songs about every single thing that I experience. And then I kind of let that go and decided I didn't really care about that much, about people thinking that. And the thing is, like with my last album, and I guess with most things I write up until this point, I usually sit down with an experience or with even just a feeling that I like have felt, or that I have come across, or just like sat in some way, and that's often the starting point for a song. But I think I have allowed myself, I think I used to feel pressure to only write things that were true.
Yeah.
that I can only sing this if it is true, and if it is something that I know. And I think that I have been able to let that go, and
Yeah.
A lot of my songs now start from a true experience and a true feeling, but the language and the experience that the song turns into can be is sometimes something I make up, and or that still feels honest, but isn't necessarily something that I like went through like word for word. And I think that's okay. And I think I'm in a moment right now of thinking about writing new songs and what kind of songs I want to make moving forward. And I'm feeling a little bit excited about this idea of like not taking my songwriting so seriously. I think it was always very important to me for it to be like beautiful and honest and emotional in every way, which I think I naturally leaned on when I'm writing. So I think that will happen anyway. But I've been considering what it would feel like to write songs that like didn't take all of those things so seriously, and that maybe we're just like a little bit simpler and a little bit like dumber, not in a mean way, just like not so like, just like be like a little bit more about nothing. Because that's another thing that I think like male artists, they write. Sometimes you listen to bands I love. Sometimes I listen to their lyrics and I'm like, dude, you are singing about nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And and like I love the songs, but it is funny when you really sit down and are like, oh, like some of these men are singing about nothing. And so yeah. And so it's like, I don't necessarily think I want to write songs like that. I like that my songs have meaning to me and have meaning to the world. But I think it could be, I've never given myself that space to be like, what could it be like to just write a song that isn't really about anything.
Those words that when you break it down is not really coherent, but together.
Right.
A song that sprang to mind that I was like haunted by was like, I think it's the Killer song, like the "Are we human or are we dancer?" What does that mean? What?
Who's to say?
Like
who's to say? Yeah.
And like giving yourself like permission, like you were talking about earlier, even like female writers and female characters that have permission to like not be pretty or not be tidy or not have everything like wrapped up or be, so it sounds almost like permission to be something other than like pretty and precious, which like, I love Pretty and Precious. I'm right. Me
too.
A giant Pretty Precious piano, like I love it. And so, but it's like the permission to also not be that, and that it's, we don't often get that. And I like when I see that in media, because you're right, it's rare.
Yeah. And I've made so many songs that are so pretty, and I love pretty songs, but I like even on this last tour, I have one song on the record called Sorry It's Not Enough that has this kind of like fun, dark outro. But with my band, we made it, we were usually playing it last in the set, and we made it like really loud. And my friend Emma, who was playing guitar on tour, just like really like slammed into her overdrive and did this really like gnarly solo at the end. And I remember always like people in the crowd like getting a little bit still and not really knowing what was going on because it was so loud and so but it was so fun, and it felt so right, and it was one of my favorite parts of the set every single night. And I think it felt really good to do something different and do something that other people didn't necessarily expect.
Yes. Like, I'm with you on that, and that like I love making pretty things, and for a while I actually even felt ashamed sometimes of making really pretty things, because I'm like, does this not have substance if it's really pretty? Got caught in the same like overthinking trap. And then I'm like, what if I want to layer 70 vocals like Enya? I can totally do that. There's no rules on being Enya. I can be Enya. And it's like, you know, there's stuff like that. But then also, you know, I love what you said about performance. I performed with a friend of mine that similarly, like, she does a performance art piece as a golem out for social justice. Which, like, no one is anticipating. Like, no one's expecting that's what's about to happen. And I would like do live scores on like the harmonium and the toy piano and stuff. And it's like, so I love that moment that you talked about where like people get still because all of a sudden, like, they see people who are, you know, presenting as female, all of a sudden doing something that's not like coded female at all. And they're just like, wait, what? And there's that glorious moment of like, yes, we too can be messy and confrontational in like this really exciting way that you were just not expecting. It was so much fun, like writing sidecar to her art. Like I think I was the solo and she was like the person in front, basically.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I miss that experience. Like I do miss like being able to play live. I don't know if you've had the experience of like live streaming and stuff like that over this time. There are some that I really enjoyed watching, but I personally like, I feel like I'm like live band karaokeing my songs.
Yeah. Yeah, it did not do it for me.
Yeah. I was just like, this is someone's vibe, and I respect the people who do it well.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them, but that is okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was thinking also what you were talking about, you know, kind of like taking writing seriously. And I was curious, like, were there any other things that you did either during this time or before that like sparked that passion that you did take as seriously as writing, or that you have done that like kind of had the gravitas of your music that then showed you like, wait, you can actually do this in a different way? Like, I'm curious, I'm like, what are the other things that you've been doing or that you're passionate about that kind of help like shift your perspective?
That's a good question. I mean, it's been so, I make music in such like concentrated ways. Like I'm not someone who's like constantly writing and constantly recording. It's just not the kind of creative person I am at this point in my life. And so like for the last album, I like wrote, it was a little bit spread out, but I wrote a lot of it just like in one time. And then the recording was spread out over a long period of time, but I don't know, like it like takes a lot for me to like get into a creative music zone. And the rest of the time I'm just like vaguely thinking about it and like hoping that I will feel interest in trying to make a song. Really. And so I actually think, I know you asked like what are other things that I feel like have contributed to this, but I really think it was just like music, like being in music zone itself, and playing with a band I think was just incredibly inspiring for me, even just playing my own songs, but like playing them, like this band that I went on tour with is the most shows I've played with like a single group of people. Like one group over many shows, and we played my release shows together and then did this 2-week tour, and I just haven't experienced that yet in my music life, and it was so great and exciting to like feel my songs take on new life in this live form and with these musicians that I just absolutely like loved and trusted and felt like I could really lean on. And that felt new to me. That felt like a new way for me to feel like inspired around my own songs and what I've already made, and also in like bringing me new ideas for what is possible for the future, especially because when I was recording this album, I was doing it, you know, in my friend's apartment, and it was just the two of us. Mostly everything on the record, and the other instruments were recorded, you know, piecemeal and then put together. And so, yeah, I think it, like you said, like there's just like playing live with people, just you can't like replicate that. And I think especially after having not done it for a long time, it felt really, really like important and special when I got to. So I think in these few months where I'm not playing any shows for a while, I think I'm trying to like remember what that feeling was like, and and might go into like recording and writing in a new way that that is maybe inspired by how it felt to play the songs from the last record live with this band. If that makes sense. That was a long answer.
I like long answers. No, that makes sense, because it's different when you're writing from a place of kind of like, if you're writing from a place of how am I going to play this live, it actually like informs what you're doing differently. Like when there's musicians that you really trust to play those parts live with you, that's very different than like, how might I record this based on maybe like what I hear in my head, but might not be something that like a group of people would play with me.
Yeah.
Like it shifts your perspective a lot, especially like, I don't know like how many instruments you play or like all that kind of different stuff. But when I'm working with people who play instruments that I don't, I find like a totally new perspective on my song, because they'll create things that I wouldn't have thought of because I don't have that familiarity with that instrument.
Yeah. And I haven't ever recorded with people who I've also played live with. But now it makes me want to. It makes me want to like find ways to like make a song and build out a song with a musician that then I continue to play it with over and over again. Yeah, I haven't ever done that, but it's the idea of it is exciting to me now.
I was like, do they live in the same city as you? Like the people that
right now we all live in Chicago, but there is a chance that my bassist Claire might be moving to LA. So it's pretty disappointing, but of course we can find ways to keep playing together. But it's like, oh, I finally found someone I love playing with, and now she's moving. But it's all right. We're gonna make it work.
You'll all have to come visit us here.
Yeah. We'll all make it over.
That's so funny. Yeah, there's certain people that once you find the people that you click with, like once you find your music crew, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it's almost like dating.
Yeah, it is.
Or you're just like, yes, you are one of the constellation.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like that.
It's like the best feeling. So I was just like, no, I hope that, I mean, I selfishly, I'm like, I'm from LA and I'm always just like, oh, everyone should experience the weirdness of my city.
Yeah.
It's there for you, and that all of you get to visit because it's a magical location. I'm curious it's so interesting talking to people during this time when we're basically like, oh no, society, it's broken. So thinking even about like moving around to different cities, it's like, what has kept you feeling connected to, I guess, like being in Chicago or being where you are? Like, have you found that like throughout the times when, you know, we have been able to like go out and about, or even like our virtual local communities, have you found yourself more tied to where you are at all during this time?
Yes and no. I think that there was like last summer and fall when people were kind of going out and doing things again. I went to so many shows. I was just so excited to be going to shows, and me and my friends we went to a lot of shows. And I loved it. And I love that part about being in Chicago is there are so many incredible bands and a lot of bands and musicians that I'm friends with that I feel really good supporting. And I feel really grateful to like have us all in one place. It really feels so special. And I mean, I'm from here, so I don't know what it's like to live anywhere else and be a musician, but I don't know, Chicago does feel like better than most places. It just feels different to me. And it's like hard to imagine having this kind of community anywhere else.
Yeah.
but yeah, at the same time, it has been hard to feel connected to people, and to other musicians or other, like, I have this like list in my head of people I want to become better friends with that I haven't been able to for 2 years because there isn't room for like casual like relationship building. Like everything is intentional, and the people who I've gotten really close with, I'm so happy to have gotten close with, but it's because I've only been hanging out with 10 people over the last year and a half.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And it's like I've seen there's so many friends I have who, we always see each other at shows, and we can always count on I can always count on them being at whatever show I'm going to, and knowing we'll see each other there. But we like missed this year of actually being able to like have conversations and be close with people. And it does feel a little bit now, like when I go to shows, like we're a little bit stuck in this like surface zone of like being in relationship with each other. And it feels hard to get past that. Especially like right now when everything is so up and down and back and forth, and it feels like impossible to like rely on any expectation or and so it's like, oh, I can think of all these folks who I'm like grateful to be in community with, but I don't actually feel that close to. And that, I think that part feels hard.
Yeah, it's like a weird liminal time in that way. Like I hear you on that, especially because there are people that like we don't have, like you said, like, there's your inner circle of people, which your inner circle can't contain like 50 people. That's going to be like 5 or 10 people.
Yeah.
And then, it's not that there's not room for other kinds of connection. It just means that you can't always have that like that deep inner connection with that many people. And so all those social ties are important though, like people in kind of all those valence shells.
Yeah.
A really antiquated model of the atom that just sprang to mind.
Yeah.
A little kind of like you drop the pebble in and then all the pools ripple out. It's like, but those are important. And it's like, I miss that too. It's like going to shows in LA, you usually see a lot of people, even though I don't know if Chicago is the same way. There's like multiple like music bubbles, and then they all kind of have these little like Venn diagram overlap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really fun going out and like seeing everybody. And like you do also sometimes then meet people from like an overlapping little bubble that then one of your friends knows. And then like it's all of that that's kind of like, it's not that those are people that are disposable. They're just not in the inner circle. And it's like, those are the social ties that like I've been missing as well. It's a very it's a very weird thing. And yeah, I was asking about like the community thing because it struck me that especially online, we form interests or we form communities around interests, whereas like wherever we are, we form them geographically.
Right.
Sometimes that can actually like diversify our interests because we're just bumping into people. We're not like seeking out people that have something that we're already interested in.
Right. And I think that's another thing actually that I've been thinking about is that reminds me of is that at the same time, like having so many friends who are musicians and feeling like I'm only socializing or hanging out with other musicians, it's starting to feel very tiring and like boring. And also it's impossible, I think, to not have these like latent like jealousies and competitive things come up.
Yeah.
It's not like I think that it's so second nature to people to, and that's what we're taught. That's what, like capitalism teaches us. And it's what we learn is to be in competition with each other. And it's so boring and it's so unhelpful and it's so destructive. And I think that I've really been craving like friend relationships with like outside of music, completely outside of music. But that that connects to what I was saying is that it's hard to do when we don't have these like casual ways of interacting with each other right now. Yeah. And in Chicago, it's been 12 degrees all week. So we can't, we can't go on a walk really for more than 20 minutes. Like it's just not possible. And we can't sit outside or, hang. It's I do feel this like challenge of like how can I make my community more robust and not like I love my music friends, but I don't want to be friends with only musicians. Like I want my world to be bigger than that.
Yeah. Well, it's like you were saying even about, like you have your Marvel movie nights.
Right.
It's like a lot of stuff that's outside of what you do. Like that was, by the way, it's so funny that you were talking about the weather. I was like, last night it was like 70 and windy, and today it's like cold and rainy. And that's why I keep like scratching my nose, is that my nose itches. I'm like, I don't know because of the weather change or what happened, but I woke up this morning and I was like, we're having weather in Los Angeles. What's happening? But yeah, it's like it's having things that are outside of your usual scope, because even like you were saying about like writing music, you can sometimes become like almost like overly precious about it, and it puts that focus too much on it, where it's almost like, it's like if you treat it kind of like a cat, you let the cat come to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that when you have a broader circle, like you can, then the music can come in, like you said, that you wait until you feel like, oh, I want to wait until I feel drawn to do this. I want to wait until I feel drawn to write. But you have to have something else that's kind of in that landscape a bit. Otherwise it becomes a game of like, don't look.
Right. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm curious, what other communities do you like to interact with a lot? Like what other communities are important to you that you look forward to kind of like rejoining when we can write a bit again?
Well, I have one of my good friends, Stella, she films. We made a music video together recently. And I am so she's so good, and I love spending time with her because she knows the things in that world that I don't know, and we can always talk about movies together. And she always has a suggestion of something I should watch that I haven't seen, and I really like love film world, but don't know anything about it. And so I think I enjoy spending time with her for many reasons, but that's one reason. And I think people, I'm always going to be drawn to like creative people, but like folks who are in like visual art world, like that's another world that I just don't really know anything about or have any like access to. But that still like excites me and interests me. And yeah, it just feels, I like being around, spending time with people who I feel like can tell me things about the world that I don't know. That's just, it's really fun and exciting for me.
It's been one of the joys actually of doing this podcast, is that I had an excuse to talk to people that had a different perspective on the world than I did. Like at least once a week I could be like, a new human.
Yeah.
Who sees things through different eyes than I do. How exciting. Yeah. When you were talking about writing your songs, even that you said that, now you're kind of freeing yourself up to have it be based on like an emotional experience you had, but it's like based on true life events. It doesn't have to be that truth. I find that the more I talk to people who have a variety of experiences, the more I'm able to tap into that, and the more empathy I have for that, even when I'm taking in other stories too.
Yeah.
It affects the way, I don't know about you, but it affects the way that I even take in art sometimes. If I think about like, like I'm having this emotional resonance. Oh, I thought about this other thing this person had told me about their experience. Oh, maybe that's what this, and it's like, all of a sudden I turn into the math lady meme.
Right. Yeah. I think that's really important though. And it makes me feel like I am like being an active participant in my life and in the world. Not that I think anyone should have any expectations around like productivity or anything right now. I think people should feel permission to do and think and feel as little as they want to. But I do welcome the moments when I feel like I'm making connections and like I'm building upon my own experiences, and like because it's, I don't know, it's easy, especially right now, like things just feel kind of boring right now.
Yeah.
And like and weak
Yeah.
and not and just and so when I have a moment of like feeling like I'm learning or feeling like I'm growing or I that's the stuff I feel hungry for.
Yeah. Well, and the learning and the growing, like, I like that you said that, no one should have to feel like they have to be productive or that they have to feel a certain way. It's like divorcing that meaning from productivity.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you're very right. That's very like internalized capitalism where it's just like, oh, you're learning something. Are you going to monetize it? And you're like, no, I'm learning something because I enjoy the fulfillment of discovery.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole story. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's a really important thing to tap into during this. I don't even know what to call it anymore. For a while, I was like making up fun names for it, and I've run out. I'm like the pancetta, the panna cotta, all sorts of things. But like at this point, it's showing us so much about like how society was structured, at least Western society was structured, and how terribly flawed that is.
Yeah. Yes.
So we're like, cool. Let's not do that. That is going poorly. Let's do something
right.
And I like your idea of like, oh, what can I do? Well, I could read a book without even looking at the clock, or like I had to, I don't know if this experience happened to you. I had to like teach myself, like again, despite my love of reading, that it was okay to read with, say, like my phone not nearby. Because I actually had the thought, like, what if there's an emergency? I'm like, you know what? If there's an emergency bad enough that like I need to have my phone next to me, like maybe I wouldn't be able to solve it with my phone.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. 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 And knowing that like when I have free time, I don't have to fill it up. I don't have to make the most of it. Yeah, I've been playing a lot of Sims. I re-downloaded The Sims recently. I used to play when I was a kid a lot and then didn't play for years because, as I'm remembering now that I have downloaded it again, I have a huge problem. it's the one thing really that I can do without thinking about literally anything else for 2 hours.
amazing.
I won't look at my phone. I won't think about food. I won't check my messages. I won't look at my email. I will do I can sit and play this game. It is, I mean, it's bad, but it's also been like, wow, like the last 2 weeks, like that's what I've been doing every single day. And I don't regret it. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel like I missed out on anything, honestly. But it is wild.
That is so funny. I remember playing, it was Tetris was my favorite. Personally, I liked actually watching my friends play The Sims, weirdly enough.
A lot of people I talk to have had that experience. I also experienced that when I was a kid.
Yeah, like I was so curious about like what my friends would do, but for whatever reason, I just never had it on my computer. But I was obsessed with Tetris. I found it so calming. But like then I'd be like falling asleep and literally I remember as a kid I'd see like little Tetris pieces like falling in front of my eyes as I would like closing my eyes to go to sleep. And I remember in my little kid brain being like, maybe I played a little like too much Tetris.
Yeah.
I crossed a line somewhere. But like that idea of giving yourself like almost like a little escape pod, whether that's like, playing The Sims or playing Tetris or like I love to go for hikes in Griffith. That's my escape time where like, yeah, my phone is kind of like nerfed anyway because there's no reception.
Yeah.
But like I also don't feel the need to check it. It's like when I'm engaged in that, when I'm kind of like zoned out in a way, it's like zoning out of one reality to like zone into another. I don't feel the desire to like
check
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a little refresher course.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Some people do sensory deprivation. You do the Sims.
Yep. Exactly.
I love that. I love that. I guess, what you said struck me. Like a lot of people I've been talking to lately have expressed like everything feels like kind of like bleak. And I was wondering, where does hope lie? Like, what do you hope for? What do you hope to create in the next like few months to a year? And not in like a productivity way, but like what, I guess what would you want to welcome in?
Well, one funny thing about playing The Sims so much is that I've created this balance system for myself, this like reward system of like, if I play The Sims, I have to do these other things also in my day. So I have to play guitar for a little bit. I have to go on a walk with the dog, like work out or do like a physical activity, or like do something around the house. A couple of those things, not all of them.
Yes.
But it has, especially right now when eventually I'm going to have to probably find a job because I'm not making any money. But right now, where I have all of this freedom to my time, it has allowed me to think about what I actually want to do with my time, and what I don't have to, but feel like I should for some reason. And the things I do want to do are play guitar when I'm not like trying to finish something, but just when I want to play a little bit. And even if it's cold, usually once I'm out in the middle of a walk, I am enjoying myself, and I do enjoy the fresh air. And I've been getting really into like working out at home, and been doing it almost every day. And it's funny, but it's been something that I've really been looking forward to, and has really like motivated my days, and like, given me little bursts of energy. So I think doing more things like that feel that are not like tied to any like end product or result, but just feel like good ways for me to get through a day, which oftentimes is like all I can really ask for, because not all days are good. And I think but when I finish the day knowing that I did maybe a couple of things that made me feel good, that were just for me, that feels like reward enough. So that's kind of my focus, I think, for the time being.
I like that a lot. And I like the reflection of like that you did something that helped you get through the day, that felt like authentic to you, that fueled you. Because that is true, that because we do sadly live in late stage capitalism, all of us at some point are like, I guess I have to do like a job thing where they give me money stuff. And I think a lot of artists are sometimes reluctant to talk about that because there's this image that like we just live on the clouds and emotions. But
I mean, and the truth is I have a time limit of like, I think I can go this long without trying to find a job. And I'm lucky enough that I've been able to go in and out of that and have moments where I'm like going to work and moments when I'm doing my other job of music. But it's I do think folks maybe don't realize, at least at this stage, when as a non-pop star, that it's a constant like reckoning of how to make it work.
Yes. And that if you do take on a job outside of music, that doesn't make you suddenly like not a musician.
Right.
And so it's like, it's a balance back and forth. And it's like, I do love the idea though, that your main focus is like what just helps you navigate through the day and what actually feels fulfilling for you.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it feels good.
I love that. And I love that you've been given, like, I think we've all in some ways been given kind of like the gift of little pockets of that time during the last few years to tune in, like, what is it that actually fuels us? And yes, sometimes you do have to make the compromise of like, taking a job temporarily or things like that. But it's like to focus on not that defining you, but what are the things that actually make you feel like you.
Yeah.
Aw. Speaking of time, I was like, thank you so much for being so generous with yours.
Oh yeah, of course. I appreciate you having me and inviting me to join you and chat.
Oh, thank you for virtually coming to the living room.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of Why Not Both. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and on Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who is literally a rock star. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next episode.